3, 2.
I got everybody pregnant with Barry Katz and semen.
I'm not comfortable with the tone this is taking.
If you're undeniable, you will not be denied.
If you want to be successful in show business, you get yourself a Jew white manager like Barry Katz.
Being a manager is just turning no's into yeses.
Creating holy shit moments. Undeniable.
You're fucking firing me up, Katz.
I love this man.
Is there anything else I should know?
You're on. What? Now I'm on the air.
Barry Katz, back in the house.
Let's do this.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Industry Standard with me, Barry Katz. This is one of my favorite things to do, kind of like an Ask Me Anything Q&A, where people send in a bunch of questions and I randomly answer them the best way I know how. So you get to Airbnb my mind for nothing. Before I get started, I just want to let you know if you want to reach me, you can do so at Barry Katz at Instagram or Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, or on my website at barrykatz.com. And if you want to watch these episodes or listen to them or whatever you want to do, you can do where all podcasts are, but especially go to my YouTube channel for the video and subscribe if you can. I'd really appreciate it. There's some really great stuff up there that I know you're going to enjoy. All right. Let's start with Elaine from Londonderry, New Hampshire. How competitive is the comedy scene? Well, I don't know how competitive it is in New Hampshire, but the bottom line is whatever you do, it's competitive wherever you work. Anybody who's listening to this or watching it, wherever you work, whether you want to admit it or not, it's competitive. If you're a young person and you just got a job as an assistant at a law firm, well, you beat a lot of people out to become an assistant at the law firm. And if you're great, you're going to move up. And if you're not great, people are going to pass you. There's going to be people who come and go all the time. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter if you're a development executive at Comedy Central or if you're an actor or a director, a stand-up comedian, whatever you are. You have to look at the business, especially entertainment. Sad to say, but it's like, I like to say, it's like the Hunger Games and Squid Game wrapped up into one. Yes, there can be more than one winner. There definitely can be. But you can't think about that. You don't want to think about, okay, if I'm just eighth best here, I'll be okay. And you may be okay. You may audition for a film and not get the original role. I remember when I was representing Jay Moore, and I represented him for 25 years, the longest I ever represented anybody. And I love Jay, and I still talk to him. I was communicating with him the other day. And I remember a time when he got Saturday Night Live, and it was very, very competitive. But it's like the NFL playoffs. It's like you go and you audition and you get the audition for Saturday Night Live, and it's kind of like you made the playoffs. You're celebrating, but now you got to win your first game to make it to the next round. So then you audition for Saturday Night Live and you are passed and you go to the second audition a lot of times. Not always. Sometimes there's only one. And it's like now you got to play another football game and you got to win. And then you win and you get the show, and now you got to get on the air. And when you get on the air, it's like you won another football game. But then you got to crush it to get more stage time and more air time. And I remember when the show wanted to extend his options several times, and they did throughout the summer. And Finally, at the end of the summer, he just told me, listen, I don't want to extend anymore. I want to bet on myself. If they want me, they'll take me. And they didn't pick up his option. And what I was really amazed about Jay is that it didn't seem to affect him because he had the confidence and he believed in himself and he knew the competitive nature of the game. But he had the example of Saturday Night Live that he held with him. He already had won. He already knew how to win. He might not have won the Super Bowl on Saturday Night Live like Will Ferrell did or Adam Sandler, but he won some playoff games. So then he got an audition for Jerry Maguire. The first audition was for, if you ever saw the movie, and if you haven't, you should see it. It's amazing with Tom Cruise. He got an audition to play the babysitter with these jazz tapes. He didn't get it. Donna Logue got it. Then they asked him back because he was good. He just wasn't right for that particular role. They asked him to audition for the quarterback, Cush. He didn't get that. Jerry O'Connell got that. And then they asked him back for the role of Bob Sugar. And he did a screen test with Tom Cruise and he got it. So you don't always have to win, but you got to pretend every time you're going out to win. There's no reason to do anything without feeling that way. So in the comedy scene, let's just say, I know you're in New Hampshire, but if you could just apply this, I think you'll understand. Like in Los Angeles, like for instance, if you want to do an open mic night at the Comedy Store, I mean, literally, like there's a drawing, there's 30 people that go on, you get 3 minutes, you don't know whether you go on first or 30th, and one person is going to be the best, and one person is going to be the 30th best. And it's your job when you go there to put the time in and be prepared to be number one. You're not training to be number 30 or number 13 or number 2. You're training to be number 1. So when the lights are shining the brightest and everybody's watching you, you f people up. And that's how you get where you want to go. Every single comedian that you know that's doing great things today has a huge following. People are following them all over the world, not just on social media, but they're paying money to go to their concerts. Every single one of them fucks people up, and that brings attention to people. It's like a car accident. People want to slow down, watch it, except it's a good car accident. And I think in the competitive nature of comedy, there's no reason to ever go on stage with the intention of being okay, or being good, or being very good, or being excellent. You have to be undeniable. And as I like to say, as eye-rolling as it is, if you're undeniable, you can't be denied. All right, let's go to the next question here. I got Steve in San Antonio, Texas. Is there a comedy etiquette? Yes, there is. There is a comedy etiquette. However, that doesn't mean that people haven't broken the etiquette. That doesn't mean there's people who aren't assholes who rise to the top. That doesn't mean that there aren't people who are nice and always do things the right way and say thank you and write handwritten thank you notes. Don't falter. They do, because at the end of the day, it's about the performance. It's what you do on stage and how the audience reacts to you. and if they come to your show in droves eventually, or if they don't. But that being said, let's just take the asshole example. If there's somebody who draws a crowd who's an asshole, and somebody who draws a crowd who's the nicest guy or woman out there, you're going to choose the person who's nice. You're going to choose the person, if you're a venue owner, if you're a producer, if you're a promoter, you're going to choose the person who you like working with, who's a great hang, who you want to have a conversation with, who doesn't curtain off the venue and walk behind curtains because they don't want to look people in the eye. You don't want to be around people who are weird or awkward or have a temper. But those people can still thrive because they have their audiences. But the main etiquette, I think, in comedy, to me, it's the same etiquette that you always want anywhere. I feel like you never want to say anything that you wouldn't say to the Queen of England if she were alive, or Mother Teresa, or a president of the United States, or somebody who you respect tremendously. It's always important to be that best representation of yourself. I always say you want to be like you are in a bathroom, a public bathroom. You never want to say anything in a public bathroom because you never know who's underneath the stalls. You always want to treat people like you want to be treated, sort of like you were taught by your parents probably when you were younger. You want to think that you're on the other side, and how would you want to be treated as a club owner, a promoter, another comedian who's bombed, another comedian who's killed? You want to be generous, you want to be kind, you want to be supportive. You don't want to run the light. You want to do your time. Never do more than your time. Always do a little tiny bit less. I will say this, though. There are times where you have to break the rules. And you have to try to figure out a way to navigate the etiquette. I'll give you an example. When Dane Cook was shooting his first half-hour special, the one with the tank top, when I was representing him, I made a deal for the 30-minute special, but I made a deal that he could do an hour. And he did the hour exactly the way he wanted to do it. I believe the last joke was the super finger bit, which turned out to be his company name and his logo, where he said essentially, you know, he created the super finger because when somebody was being an asshole, one finger wasn't enough, so you wanted to give him the super finger. And he did that bit and it killed. And he got off stage and the crowd was going crazy and he was so happy and so excited. And the Comedy Central executive came in and said, "You have to go back out there." He said, "What do you mean we have to go back out there?" And they said, "Because you gave the finger to the cameras. We can't use that. We probably can't use that." I said, "You want him to go back out after he said thank you, good night, and killed like that?" They said, "Yes, please, Barry." And it wasn't Dane's job to sort of break the etiquette rules. When you're a manager, it was my job. And I had the banter back and forth with the Comedy Central executive, which wasn't pleasant. And at the end of the day, I told her, "Just give me a minute." And I met with Dane. And I said, "You know something, Dane? I want these people to remember you as a good guy, somebody who did a great job, who over-delivered, and who gave them what they wanted. And my instincts tell me that that closing bit is going to stay in. So why don't you just go back out and do another ending the way you have so many bits. And I'm pretty sure I can talk to the people and make sure everything's okay, and they'll be really appreciative of it. And he did that, and I'll never forget that. And he created a tremendous vibe that night, and I didn't. I had to break comedy etiquette a little bit and make things more difficult. But at the end of the day, I think in that particular instance, they respected the fact that he went back out and gave them what they wanted. Kind of like on a movie set when you do a line your way, you do another line your way, and the director says, could you just give me one the way it is on the page? And instead of saying, no, I like it the way it is, just give them what they want. And then have people like me or agents fight for the take that you want. So comedy etiquette, no asshole policy, treat people with respect, and always pretend you're the person on the other side and how you would want to be treated. Next question from Samuel in Eugene, Oregon. Can you make money in comedy? Well, I don't know how much money you can make in Oregon, but yes, you can make money in comedy, but you can make money in anything. I always tell my sons, do you want to work for a person or be the fucking person? In other words, you can't lose if you're your own boss. You have all the opportunities, you're using your brain, you're doing things the way you want to do them. And yes, things can go haywire, they might not go as well as you want them to go, but you're in charge. And that's what I love about so many different things in this world of comedy. Just look at some of the biggest people in the business. There's people like Ed Bassmaster who do pranks and characters. For 10 years, he's been relevant and killing it. Makes a ton of money. Bert Kreischer, another guy, fought like hell to book acting and film roles and work in comedy clubs. But it wasn't until he started his own podcast that his life changed forever. I mean, I can't even tell you how many examples there are. I mean, there's the animated show on YouTube. I think it's called Hell of a Boss. I think it's got like 3 million subscribers. Self-made. Never bought a network. You just have to get out there and start. And you will make money if you start rising through the ranks and showing people that your premises are original, your jokes are original, the audience laughs harder and applauds longer than your peers, and that you're a good person to everybody. You will rise like a rocket ship. And then, if you are in Eugene, Oregon, or wherever you are, then you'll move to the next town. And then you'll start over again. But you'll have the blueprint for getting to where you want to go, starting to make money, and then making serious money. Hey everybody, it's Barry Katz, and I wanted to talk to you about Blueprint for Success. This is a community that I put together during the pandemic to help all artists of every walk of life in the entertainment business, no matter where you are in that part of this journey. It's designed to help you. There are podcasts with people that will inspire you, like Kevin Hart, Judd Apatow, Bill Burr, that you can't find anywhere else but on this program that I've interviewed, to times where we get to talk to executives in the business that you would never have access to tell you what you need to hear and to answer your questions, to all sorts of different videos and master classes designed to help you get to the promised land. That's what the Blueprint for Success is. Doesn't matter whether you want to be a stand-up comedian, a sketch performer, a podcaster, an actor, an actress, director, writer, social media person, whatever you want to be. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've had the honor and been humbled to represent people like Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Louis C.K., Dane Cook, and probably over 20 other people who went from a studio apartment to being a multi-millionaire and a household name. And I want that for you, and I wanted to take the time with this program to be able to help you on your way there, to get there and to heighten and increase the trajectory of your career. Blueprint for Success is the way to go. I'm proud to be a part of this program, and I'd be proud to have you to be a part of it too. Next question. Jack from Omaha, Nebraska. What advice do you have for someone who isn't funny but wants to be? Well, I think like anything, it's repetition, repetition, and more repetition. That's how you become better at anything. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Anything or any product that you see that's successful or that's doing well is because they mastered it. They figured out the best way to put something out there. And they sell it better than anybody else. Look, I don't have to tell you this. I say it ad nauseum. Comedy is about the sale. So if you're not funny, it's because you're not writing the jokes on the page that make people laugh. First thing I would do is I would put all my jokes on paper and I just ask strangers to read it. And if they laugh, you're doing something right. And if they're not laughing, keep writing. The same with the audience. I remember, I think it was Lance Crowther on a podcast I did. He said something to the effect of, that I love to say as well, is like the audience is your writing partner. They're there for you. It's a one-night stand, essentially. I don't mean to get creepy, but I'll explain what I mean. It's like if you are somebody who does that, sometimes it's fantastic, sometimes it's not great. But you never see the person again. Same with the audiences. You never see the same audience twice, so don't worry about it. You're practicing. You're practicing your rhythm, and you have to practice in front of an audience, which sucks. Look, if I want to learn how to sew, to be a good seamstress, if that's what it's called, or tailor, I have to practice alone until I get great. I'm not practicing in front of anybody. If I want to be a music producer and I'm making music in my room, I am doing it over and over again. I'm competing essentially with nobody there in the room, but I have to trust my gut and I have to trust my instinct to know that I am doing the right thing and I am getting better. So I think one of the expressions that I love the most when it comes to thinking about whether if you're not funny and you want to be, is the first thing is you have the advantage on the internet to study everybody. I mean, it's unbelievable. You can look at anybody. I was just watching Robert Schimmel's special, the late Robert Schimmel, Unprotected. Fucking master. Intelligent blue humor. Incredible poise and the way he delivered the jokes. Just amazing. And you can watch anybody you want. So it's that expression, study greatness, imitate greatness, become great. And look at the examples around you. You can go to the comedy club, you watch a show, watch how people's timing is. Watch how they put things together. And understand, joke by joke, how they do it. And you assemble your material that way, where it's the small victories. So if you're not funny now, and you get one joke that works or one joke that's funny, That's a win. So what if the rest of your set is bombing? You got that one to build on. And then when you figure out that next one, you put it together with the other one. And slowly, before you know it, you'll have 5 minutes that's really special. And then after that 5 minutes, 10, then 20, and 30, and an hour. It happens. But it happens with practice and repetition. To me, that's how you overcome not being funny and becoming funny. And one last thing I want to say, every single person that you see that's you think is extraordinary has bombed multiple times and have some of the toughest sets of their life and reevaluated their comedy life many, many times alone in the fetal position on a couch somewhere. It happens. The world tests you, but the world has a plan. But you have to believe in yourself, and you have to incrementally figure out a way to get better one joke at a time. Next question from Perry in Port Chester, New York. Are there any talents you wish you could work with? Wow, that's a great question. I love comedy. I love comedians. Watching great comedy makes me really, really happy. And when you watch somebody really special, it never ceases to blow you away. And I just have always felt that way. I love watching highly original people. And some people might not have been the most highly original in the formula that they delivered, but they did blow me away at the time. I remember watching a young Jimmy Fallon from Albany, New York. He used to do this bit where he'd put a troll doll on a stool and do musical impressions of rock and roll bands. And he'd do parodies of their biggest songs. Again, musical parody, it's not something that's a formula that hasn't been done over and over again. But there was something fresh about him and young and interesting in the way he did things. And I always loved him, and I always thought that he was a really, really wonderful person whenever I was around him. And he's somebody that I remember that I saw, but he was represented at the time. Other people that I've seen, and there's so many, and there's too many to mention. But I love Mitch Hedberg. I always thought he was incredible and so original, and I loved being around him. I loved seeing him perform. I think his comedy to me was life-changing. Even though he was playing a little bit of a character, which I know adds lighter fuel to the fire, I still love that. I'll just mention a few others. Again, there's just so many. When I first saw Chris Rock at the comic strip, he was like 18 or 19 years old, and he was represented by the guys who owned the comic strip. And he did this amazing 5-minute routine on how Bill Cosby was a racist and Fat Albert was a racist cartoon. And I just was like, I was just stunned at how phenomenal it was. Even though he really was young and he wasn't really that ready, I love that. Jim Jefferies really always struck me as somebody that really had a way of constructing routines that were holy shit funny, but challenged the audience tremendously. And I always talk about the gun control bit, because to me that's one of the greatest bits that you could see. It's incredible. It's kind of like Carlin-esque in a way. And so I've always loved what Jim did. I think Dave Attell is to me, like, if you're a comedian and you don't think he is one of the greatest of all time, then I don't even think you know or should be talking about comedy. I'm the kind of guy who hates going to places. Again, like when I travel, I normally like to go to one country, and I don't, and when I go there, I'll go there for a short time, and I'll go to another country. I'll go to multiple countries so I can just see as much as possible. I never want to go back. And there's something about New York City. Every time I go back to New York City, I figure out a way to go to the Comedy Cellar and go to the original room, and when it's sold out, and sit on one of those pull-out benches by the little service bar and watch Dave Attell close out a show. There's nothing greater, and I've always admired and respected him, and he's always blown me away. And again, there's too many comics to mention, but those are a select few that I just think of off the top of my head that I always loved, but they were represented at the time when I met them. And obviously, even if they weren't represented, that doesn't mean that I would have worked with them or they would have wanted to work with me, but I'm just sharing that when I say the phrase blowing people the fuck away, all of those people did that. All right, from Samantha in Twin Falls, Idaho. In your opinion, what makes a great comedian? I think we've talked about a lot of stuff today, but I think if you really look at who's out there and what they're doing, I'd say the first thing that makes a great comedian is an original voice, and that's twofold. Believe it or not, it's a voice that's like original and recognizable in tone, in cadence, how they speak, how they deliver, their style, and their voice in terms of the tone of how their comedy is. So I always like and believe that a great comedian is somebody who you could recognize their voice in literally 3 seconds or less, like George Carlin or Richard Pryor or Bill Burr or Chappelle or Rodney Dangerfield. Then the next thing I look at is the style and how you do your comedy. Like I just mentioned Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, one of my favorites of all time. The guy told stories in 5 seconds. They weren't just jokes, they were stories. I went to the bar during the day. I asked the bartender to surprise me. He pulled out a picture of my wife. I mean, that's not just a joke. I mean, we know the guy's day drinking, which means he has a problem. He has a relationship with his bartender that's like his friend. His friend fucks him over by sleeping with his wife, and he finds out that his wife is cheating on him in 5 seconds. It's incredible. Just incredible. Or Chris Rock. If you just go and watch the routine, I think it's 9 minutes long, the difference between black people and, I'm not allowed to say it, the N-word. This routine, it's insanity how powerful it is in front of a black audience. Just one line after another that tells the story to back up his premise. Not just one joke to back up the premise, not just two, but literally I think 15 different pieces that back up the premise that he's trying to put across. It's just incredible. Or just like somebody like Dave Attell, which I always think of the first jokes I ever heard him do. And again, I'm paraphrasing. It's been a long time, so if I screw it up, please forgive me. But, I remember one where he said, something to the effect of, I don't like to travel, not because I don't like going across the world. It's just when I was younger, my father used to beat me with a globe. I mean, just telling the story and pulling the rug underneath you because you don't know where he's going. Another joke that I've always told of his that I love, I probably butcher it, but he says, I went to a clothing store with my friend. He walked into the dressing room. He comes out wearing overalls. He looks at me and he says, Dave, what go with these? I looked at him and I said, I'll tell you what don't go with those. Jobs and women. I mean, how can you... It's just, you can't deny it. So you got great premises, whether you're just a joke teller or you're a storyteller, you're still a storyteller because every joke is like a story. Every routine has a story. Even if you're a one-liner comic, there's a story. Stephen Wright, I went to a store that I knew was open 24 hours. I get to the front, the manager's closing up. I said, what are you doing? The sign says open 24 hours. He looks at me and he says, not in a row. How can you deny the brilliance of these pieces? George Carlin, baseball versus football. The 7 words you can't say on television. Or just the simple line about the environment, people worrying about the environment and how we got to take care of the environment. And I think the line that I remember was, the world is going to shake us off it like a dog shakes off fleas. So, original voice, 2 original voices. Premises that are original and unique that you never see anybody doing, and a storytelling ability that's really important. And then confidence, salesmanship, power, making us believe that you are the funniest person in the world, even if you're not really that secure on stage or you're playing a character that's not as secure. It's something that's really, really important. And I think you put it all together and you create a semblance of originality that no one else can find anywhere around your town or your region or the country or the world. Get a helmet. It's all over. Last question from Jeremy in Phoenix, Arizona. How can I make myself stand out? There's a lot of great similar themes today, which I like. I like today's show. It hammers home some really important themes. I mean, the last question essentially shared all the qualities you need to have to be great, in my opinion. But here, I'm going to answer this a different way. How can I make myself stand out? So we already know what we talked about earlier. So now you have to figure out how to make yourself stand out and how to figure out how to be somebody who your town talks about, your city talks about, other comics talk about you, and you're on everybody's lips. So you do all those things we talked about in this show. But now you got to figure out what is it that's going to sustain it and what's going to get me to my destination quicker. So I'll answer this in that way. I hope you don't mind. To me, it's the hours that you put into the craft. So again, these are additional things to everything we talked about. So look at this as like kind of like a bonus thing for you. So you got to put the hours in. If you're a comedian in a town like, let's say, Phoenix, Arizona, and you're getting on stage 3 times a week, and another comic is getting on stage 7 times a week in New York City, at the end of the year, who's going to be more than twice as good as the other comic? The person who's getting on stage more. Additionally, the person who's working at home on their writing from the moment they get up and every free moment they have is going to be in a situation that's going to do better than the person that isn't. So it's not a surprise that in order to make yourself stand out, besides all those other qualities that we talked about in this episode, you got to put the work in. You got to outwork and outsmart the people that you're working with. Yeah, everybody at the club's going to walk up to you and hug you and ask you how you're doing, things going well, tell me about your last gig, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you and them are drowning in the ocean, they can only save one. Guess who they're going to save? Themselves. So you have to be in a situation that in every phase of the game, you have to figure out a way to win. You got to win those battles. I know I talked about football today, but you know how like coaches will say, hey, we played well in every phase of the game. Or else if they lost the game, we played well in this phase, and this phase, but we didn't in this phase. You got to look at every single area that there is in comedy, and you got to master those areas little by little. Not just the material, not just the hours you put in, not just the overall smart way that you put yourself out there, not just how you treat people, but every little thing. You got to look at it as like a list, like a almost like a decathlon of comedy. And you're shooting to be number one in every area. You're shooting to be number one in originality. You're shooting to be number one in performance. You're shooting to be number one in original premises. You're shooting to be number one in original jokes. You're shooting to be number one with kindness and generosity. You're shooting to be number one in being not an asshole. You're shooting to be number one in the hardest working person in the room. You're shooting at number one to be, after you get off stage, that everyone in that room knows that you're the best. And so the last thing that you have to take care of, the last thing out of 10 things, hopefully I said, is you have to be the greatest salesman in the world. Not just to the audience, but to the promoters, the club bookers, your fellow comedians, your audience, everyone who you come in contact with. They need to believe as much in you as you believe in yourself. All right, so that's it for this episode where I answer questions, ask me anything. I had a fun time today. I'm really excited about answering all these questions, and I'm really grateful to all of you who listen. And I hope you can tune into the YouTube channel and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.